That's actually one of my That's one of my grapes, Nikisha.
My grapes.
One of my grape gripes. Grape gripes. We have a new segment called Grape Gripes.
Great.
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
See dead people.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie,
And Nikisha.
where we share our love for spooky things and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Well, welcome everyone.
Hello.
All the fireworks, all the sparkles, all the everything.
Sparkles.
Sparkles. I think I was trying to think of the sparklers. You know? Yes, but I said sparkles.
Yeah, okay, that makes
No,
sense.
I like
Yes.
sparkles more. Yeah, that's better.
Well, it's still Hispanic Heritage Month, so like sparkles for that, you know? That's
Woohoo!
all the good things. So with that, today we are talking about the 2006 Spanish-Mexican historical dark fantasy horror film, Pan's Labyrinth. Eyeballs on the hands. Ah! Okay, so this movie is written, directed, and co-produced by one Guillermo del Toro, and it stars Ivana Baquero, Sergi Lopez, Maribel Verdú, Doug Jones, and Ariadna Gil. Now, heavy spoilers for everything that is Pan's Labyrinth. If you have not seen it, press pause, go watch it, and then come back and listen to us talk about it. Or if it might be too historically spooky dooky for you, just listen to us talk about it and you'll get the general gist of it. It's all good.
Historically spooky dooky. I love that.
That's how I felt watching it.
Yeah, sure.
I'll throw that out there. It was very spooky dooky for the history buffs. So, Jamie, give us some trigger warnings along with that.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a, dark fantasy. So there are like fairy tale, supernatural-y elements to it. I mean, if that is not for you, just throwing that out there. But yeah, historical. This takes place in 1944 in Spain. So it's focusing a lot on the Spanish Civil War. If that is disturbing to you, this might not be for you. But again, like historically, 1944, there's a lot of disturbing historical things going on. In the periphery, there is a lot of like sociopathic murdering happening in this film. Not just because there is a war happening, but also because one of the characters that we're following is causing a lot of harm to people in pretty brutal ways. So if you don't like guns or gunshots or torture or references to torture, there's some like really grotesque post-torture looking visuals that are very unpleasant. There's some like jokery face slashing that's very unpleasant. It's
so jokery.
References to eating children, also death of children. This is a sad movie. This is a very sad movie. I cried at the end. Yeah. So if you don't want to be sad, this, if you got to be in the right mood to let the tears fall, then maybe watch this another time.
Let the rain fall down and wake my dreams. That's what it made me think of when he said tears. You need to let the tears fall down. Okay, yeah, this I'm excited to hear you guys' thoughts about this movie because it's a lot, especially like Jamie mentioned on the historical end because of the year that this takes place in. But before we get into all of that, producer Brian, please give us some words.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Producer Brian here. As a reminder, you can find us on YouTube. Hi, YouTube. Check us out there. We are a delight. and you can see us there. So you got that. And then additionally, you can find us wherever you get social media at Talk Horror Pod. Definitely find us on TikTok, on Twitter X, and of course, you can find us on Instagram as well. So we're gearing up for October. We're going to be doing some really fun stuff on there in October. So check it out.
Yes. Very excited. I already have some of my Halloween swag on. If you see us on the YouTube.
Big Trick Energy is a great t-shirt with a pumpkin on it.
With the pumpkin winking. So just putting me in the mood, all the right feels. It's a little rainy outside too. So we're just feeling the vibes today.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot that I got a trick or treat bag that's like hiding all the way in the background.
I see
You can see
it.
Yeah, it's his lollipop.
His lollipop, half-eaten lollipop. Super cute. Yeah, I want to go back to Spirit Halloween just to get. There's some places that have all those cute bags, but the ones that I've been to, I haven't seen all of like the cute little backpacks. So I need to find one. Maybe since I'm in Chicago, they'll have some. So
Yeah.
fun times.
We made our first trip to a Spirit and had a delightful time.
Yeah, check out the TikTok.
I literally was gonna say, was it on TikTok?
Yes, yes it was.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we need to do a. Oh wait, well, have you guys watched anything this week?
I
Anything
watched
new?
something.
Oh.
I didn't do this on purpose, but I stuck with Hispanic Heritage Month and I watched Bird Box Barcelona.
How was that?
I really liked it. I thought it was way more interesting than the original Bird Box.
Really?
Well, the original Bird Box is telling a pretty straightforward I need to survive type of story, and the kitschy thing about it, the hook is that you can't see, and the monsters make you want to kill yourself. This one I don't want to spoil anything. But this one had an extra layer to it that while the third act for me, I had a hard time kind of going with them, both from a character justification standpoint and the change in character standpoint. It was a little bit too much for me, but that just keeps it from being really good. I still really liked it.
Okay.
And what was funny is that it takes place in Barcelona, which is where we just watched Wreck, which took place there. So all the apartment buildings they're going through and stuff look exactly like the Wreck apartment building. So it really fit in there. And for those of you at home being wait, where? I'm so sorry. Barcelona.
I was waiting for you to say that. I was I'm surprised you didn't say it the first time. Like that.
But it's on Netflix. I really enjoyed it. It's not perfect. It's not the best thing I've ever seen. I watched it on a flight, and I thought it was totally engaging.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have to add it to the list while we still, especially during this month. So you guys check that out if you can. Fantastic. Well, we need a plot summary of this movie.
What's the plot?
And a lot happens in this. So, Brian, good luck to you because it's
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 jam-packed.
a doozy. It's jam-packed.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see what I can do here. All
right.
Whenever you're ready, I guess I can be ready.
Producer Brian, you have 2, and it's only 2 minutes
Yes, I
to
will
give
try my
us
best.
the plot of Pan's Labyrinth. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Ready, set, go.
Okay, so Pan's Labyrinth takes place in Spain in 1944. The end of the Spanish Civil War was in 1939, and then the fascists took over. And so this is the story of this little girl named Ophelia who moves with her pregnant mother to the woods of Spain to basically meet and live with her new stepfather, who is a fascist captain, and he's really bad, very villainous. The little girl is obsessed with fairy tales and believes she finds fairies in the woods. Her mother is very sick from giving birth to the baby, and the captain is very excited that he is going to have a son. He's, in terms of his lineage, his what he's passing on, his legacy. in the woods all surrounding the compound are mercenaries trying to defeat the fascists, and the captain is there to try and defeat the mercenaries. Ophelia, the little girl, is obsessed with fairy tales, as I mentioned, and she is greeted by by a faun and a labyrinth, and she's given 3 different tasks in order to become the princess that she is. This movie is bookended by a story about a princess who went into the human world and dies there but becomes human, and but she would be reincarnated in another little girl and be brought back into this like magical land. Her first task is that she needs to get a key from a frog. The second task is she needs to get a knife from the pale man, the one with the eyes that we all know. And the last task is that she needs to spill her brother's blood to open the portal. She does the first task. The second task, she eats grapes and ruins everything. And the third task she does, however, she is killed by the fascist. And spills her blood and opens up the portal. So she dies in real life, but she becomes, the queen, the princess again. And throughout this whole thing, you have the secondary story about the fascists, and who's spying. And at the end, they kill the captain after he kills Ophelia. That was
Yeah. No, that was great. Yeah.
Good job. Yay!
It's a lot that happens, but that is absolutely like the general gist of it, and we'll get into details
General
of
gist.
it also. General gist.
Yeah, it's tough because you need to like infuse into there the fact that like it's ambiguous as to if she's the only one who is experiencing these like magical things.
Right.
Is this her way of dealing with all the tragedy and horror around her life?
Right, like
or are they
escapism.
actually happening to her? At the end of the movie, she's talking to the faun, but the captain doesn't see
captain.
the
Be
faun.
done.
So like, yeah. So is that us? So do we definitively know? I guess that's one of my questions once we get into it. Definitively, was the magic real, or was this her way of dealing with it? Because they show her dying at the end, and they show the captain not seeing the faun. However, what's your take on it? I'm very interested in hearing that. Yeah, that's Pan's Labyrinth.
That's the plot.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it because there's a lot to discuss and pan out. Haha, Pan's Labyrinth. Hey. So let's get into our first segment, which is likes and gripes.
And now our likes and gripes.
So
Before
I'll
I
let-
want to ask, has anyone not seen this before?
I have not.
Oh,
You
you
go
should go
first.
first.
Okay, so here's the thing, guys. When you said, okay, we're going to watch Pan's Labyrinth, of course I've heard of the movie. I have to tell you that what was in my brain was the movie Labyrinth from the 1980s with David Bowie. So when I started Pan's Labyrinth, I was like, wait a minute. The effects on here are too good. What year did this movie come out? Because I never do the research until after I watch the movie.
I like that you don't do that because I feel like
Yes.
you're not influenced by anything. You get to watch the movie
Right.
as Nikisha. Yeah, totally.
Yes, like just experience it. And so as the movie was going on, I was just like, this is not what I thought that this was going to be. So that's the first thing. So I already was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to vibe with this movie just because I thought it was Labyrinth and David Bowie in the 80s. And I was like, I don't think this is going to be like my jam.
Sure.
So cut to actually watching it and experiencing it. And I was like, wait a minute, these effects are fantastic. This storyline is so heartbreaking. And this is a way better experience than I ever thought that I was going to have watching this movie. So that is the start of my journey with this movie.
Sure.
So as I was going through it, I will say some more general points about the movie.
General
points. I really enjoyed the historical storyline. I think more than the magical storyline, mostly because I wanted more magic. Because it's Pan's Labyrinth, and so I knew there was going to be magical elements to it, and so I think I would have just wanted more, but it's already a 2-hour long movie. It just felt a little rushed in trying to get that storyline across, as opposed to the historical war storyline felt like it really was layered and came to a nice conclusion, and everything fit very well, within that particular story. Like that didn't feel rushed to me. And I also was a little annoyed at Ophelia, because there were some points where she's a very intelligent young girl, but then she would make some decisions that would make you think otherwise. And for me, it was kind of like, if you are going to be given these tasks, if you're going to believe right off the bat, first off, like you're going to see a fawn, and there's no way that little girl wasn't going to be afraid of that fawn. That fawn was scary. And she was just like, hey, yeah, cool. What's up? What's the deal? What do you need me to do? Great. But it was just kind of like, okay, she bought into it so quickly that by the time we get to the eating of the grapes in the dinner scene, it's like, of course there has to be some kind of like conflict. Like I get it. Like there's going to be something where, we're going to have the scary, spooky aspect because she didn't follow the rules. But that just seems so out of character. I wish that if there was a conflict that was going to happen to where she didn't completely follow the rules, it would have been something that was a little bit more complicated than just not eating food, if that makes sense.
I that's actually one of my that's one of my grapes, Nikisha.
My grapes.
One of my grape gripes. Grape gripes. We have a new segment called Grape Gripes.
Grape gripes.
That's one of my gripes as well. I actually wrote down that she's too smart to have eaten the grapes. What I actually think I need, I don't mind that she didn't. So I don't mind that she ate the grapes, because in the first half of that movie, they're talking about not letting people eat. You need the cards.
The ration cards, yes.
Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. The rationing. Meanwhile, they're sitting at this long table gorging on all these cheeses and everything like that. And then you get to her, and that a foil for that, where she's the Pam Man's at the end, and then it's the room is very similar to the room that they were in above. Just kind of showing that like the gluttony and all of that. Meanwhile, the guy at the end of the table is this thin, pale man, which I liked. And then she eats these grapes. What I needed from that was I needed something a little bit more from either the script or the moment. I needed something that felt like Aladdin, where Abu touches the ruby. I needed something that it was kind of out of her control, because at her core, she is an abused, sad little girl who is eating rations, and I would have loved to have seen her like actually tempted by it, not just like, I'll pop 2 grapes in my mouth, like that type of a thing. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I agree. There just needed to be a little bit, like the moral complex needed to be heightened, as opposed to just like, here are grapes and I'm just going to eat them, with all of these like gorgeous little fairies just trying to get her to not.
Yeah, I also think that that's one of the interesting things about this movie, like just to talk about grape gripes a little bit more. Grape gripes. Because like the movie is very grounded in reality. Like it is ultra violent. Like the one side is very grounded, and then you get to the other side. All these characters are archetypes from fairy tales, even down to the fact that the people in the woods were the woodsmen helping to hunt down the wolf, essentially at the end.
Yes,
like all of that, and so I have the ability to make the leap with them. Like in terms of like if something feels a little bit like off, like. I get it, because we're still watching a fairy tale-esque type thing, but
absolutely.
if you're going to ground everyone's character motivations in something real, that's why the Grape Gripes sticks out to me more than anything else in this movie. Grape Gripes, TM.
Yes. Trademark. Grape Gripes.
Trademark. Grape Gripes.
Yeah. No, I agree, because everything else I could suspend my disbelief, because exactly like you said, Brian, it's all. You can't ignore the fantasy aspect of it. Like it's all going to be incorporated even within the real world stuff. because that's just the nature of the movie. But yeah, that one moment in particular just really stuck out to me as, you're smarter than that. That's not the case. One quote that just made me chuckle a little bit was when the mother was talking about like having a baby, like she was getting really sick, and she said having a baby is complicated, and then Ophelia was like, then I'll never have one. I'm like, yeah, girl. Absolutely.
That was funny.
I also thought what really got me, and I'll also say this like in when we do the 4 S's, like it wasn't scary, but it was so unsettling. Like I don't like watching anything with people getting shot. Like that's just a huge thing for me. Like I'll see, you know, Freddie or Jason do like whatever to whoever, you know what I'm saying? But like the reality of just people like getting shot, and especially in war or like police films and stuff like that's just not my bag, and it's always just very unsettling. So I will say and I'm sure we'll all talk about this too, the moment when the captain beat that the son and the father, but he was beating the son with the bottle, and I wasn't expecting them to show all of that, because I didn't look at the rating either of what this movie was, but I was assuming because there were some magical aspects that it wasn't going to be too gruesome. But the fact that they showed that
my guess
boy's
is
face,
an R because they kill a child. I'm just throwing that out there. I could be wrong.
yeah.
R.
Producer Brian is looking it up. Yeah.
It's R.
Yeah, I feel like I'm really nailing these like little guesses of what the MPAA would do based on random things. So
I think you're very good at that. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
But that makes sense. Like the opening scene is like a child dying. But yes, the father-son death was so unsettling and gruesome. But I think the actor that portrays the captain was fantastic. And I think that his storyline of like not wanting to deal with his emotions, talking about like his father when they're at the table, and then like the time of death of his father, and he's like, well, my father never wore a watch. But like the sentimental aspect of like trying to fix the watch, and then going on with like carrying the legacy, and then him wanting to be like, tell my son like when I died, and then they're like, they're not even gonna know your name. And I was like, that is badass right there.
That moment in that movie, more than the death, when she says no, he won't even know your name, and like that's the thing that kills him before the bullet enters, and it's so satisfying. It's like so satisfying. That is one of the more I think that he is one of the greatest movie villains of all time.
Yeah.
And because not only of like who he is, but what they show of that he does, and because we've talked a lot on this podcast how villains don't get the deaths that they deserve a lot of the times. To me, this was a perfect.
This is very satisfying.
Yeah, totally. Jamie and I, when we were watching it, we finished it just before recording it, and like I don't know, there was like when that happens, like we were both like, you could feel the energy in the room, like of like satisfaction, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Well, sure, because it's coupled with something that's like so deeply upsetting that it's like the movie already ends on a sad note, so you gotta give me something, a kernel of satisfaction in that
kernel
moment.
Or a captain.
Right.
Yeah.
Colonel
Nikisha,
Captain?
when you were talking about that scene with the father and son, like this movie isn't overly graphic, but like the moments where they do give you the like horror, the graphic horror, it's so intense and gratuitous, and also like very, very practical. Like they do such a good job with the effects that it's so it's not constantly in your face. So it's very, very intentional when you are seeing it. And it's just enough to underscore like this guy is not just like an intense captain, like trying to win a war that it shouldn't even be happening, but he is like a true like psychopath, and these things are like, it's just it's so awful. Like I there's several moments of that I had to look away. That's one of them. The like post torture
the kid that was stuttering.
Stutters. Yeah, when you see his hand, like, it looks
Yes.
so real. They do such a good job, and like I can't look at it. Like, there's other like gory things like Saw that I don't really care about, but like this is so, it just like hits you so hard, so much harder, I feel like. Because of the balance of how they do it.
Well, it's so much. There's so much layered in it because there's already the intensity of the situation underscoring, like you said, then the actual practical. Because it's not like Quentin Tarantino and like blood is everywhere. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
It's very much just like, and intentional, like you said, Jamie. And anytime, like, even when the captain is shot and like it's just a close up on his face and like the bullet, and it was as satisfying as it was. That was still just like, this is a lot.
Or like his face when after he gets cut and he's like trying to sew it back up, and it's like, I can't watch this. It's too much for me. But like again, other silly things I like. When they give it to you so much, you kind of get desensitized to it. Yes, and I feel like
that's exactly it.
They very much like place it, again, super intentionally, where it is more effective because you're not expecting it, interwoven with this like fairy tale story.
And I think that's the exact same thing too, Jamie. Like, all those points are dead on. You're not expecting that because you know that it's a fantasy movie. And so having that much of realism ingrained in it, which I think is also why I enjoyed that part of the story a little bit more, because it was so grounded, that it's just, it's when it comes, you're just so surprised by it because you're not thinking that that's what this is going to really be about. I just have like two more things, but give it up for Mercedes, because I was not expecting her to be kind of like the final girl in the situation.
Sure.
But so that scene when she's getting captured and then she makes him the Joker, I'm like, Joker origin stories.
It's not the same thing.
Right. And then when the doctor finally is like, I've had enough of this, and he like is walking away, so like the captain kind of finds out that the doctor's been helping everyone, but the doctor's like also realizing that the captain knows, but he like walks away after he, Mercy kills the guy with the stutter, and then him getting shot in the back. That whole scene, that I'm getting like chills thinking about it, because that was just so powerful for him to walk away and be like, I know that I'm about to die, but like I'm going out with the integrity that I want to go out with, especially after God knows what he had to do to, be helping with the captain, but also be helping with his people in the woods. So
yeah, and also when it comes to the captain and stuff like that, Jamie and I were talking, because there's the sequence in the Pale Man's room where they show all the children's shoes. And the children's shoes are a very Holocaust image. And while and while these aren't, and Jamie and I like paused the movie for a second, and we actually talked about that, because at first we were like, is this like too much? Like, should he have included this? And then we made the decision that because this takes place in 1944, and even though these are not Nazis, these are fascist Spanish leaders, like, it still is of the time. It's it's an image that most people know what it represents, so it adds that like gut feeling to it. And even though, as the second that it says 1944 at the top, at the very beginning of the movie, even if you don't know anything about the Spanish Civil War and all the fallout after the Spanish Civil War, it still gives you Nazi World War II vibes, and that's enough to get by on in terms of historical reference.
Yeah, it's all about like the atmosphere, right? And knowing what the time period is, and so everything is just heightened because of that exact thing. The last thing I'll say, and we'll talk about this all together, is just I did like the ending of her like leaving her physical body and joining back with her family, but it is kind of like, did it really happen? Did it not happen? Because there was so much that was going on, I'd like to believe that it actually did happen. It's like giving some semblance of like a happy ending, but overall, yeah, I really enjoyed my time. And again, it was not Labyrinth, so I was very happy. Who would like to go next?
I can go.
Okay.
I don't know how many times I've seen this movie. I want to say maybe this was like my third or fourth time. And I couldn't remember a lot because this movie's been out like for a while. I couldn't remember a lot except for like the things that were seared into my brain were the Pale Man, and knowing that the ending was sad. And I couldn't remember exactly how everything was going to play out, but I knew it was sad. I was like 95% sure that she died at the end. But I like couldn't remember how we got there. So I braced myself. Because as I've mentioned before on this podcast, again, this is just my opinion. Please do not come for me. But like my preference is not the films that end sadly. I like films as a form of escapism. So I want happy endings for all of my characters.
Yes.
So, you know, here I am with a stuffy nose post finishing this movie because it does make me cry. But I really like this movie. I like the magical realism of it all. I did have to do a brief wiki deep dive of like what is happening in Spain during this time just to get more of the context. You can still like get the gist, but like I just wanted to know exactly what was going on. Even if you don't like know anything about what's happening in Spain, like Brian said, like you can still watch this movie and like totally get it and like it's still very clear. But I was just like I want to know more about like what's happening. I love Ophelia. She's just such a good character that's like very curious, but also like, you know, her head's in the clouds kind of thing. But I think when you get the context of like her father's dead, she's living in like this, you know, during this time period where like her mom married somebody new that she doesn't like, who she's trying to like force her to be her new dad. And like I don't think we really know how much time has passed between when her father died and the captain becoming her new stepfather, and like her mom being really sick. So it's like it makes a lot of sense that she is this, you know, girl whose head is in the clouds, who's leaning into the fantasy of it all, as again like parallel as a form of escapism. So like that I just really enjoy her character as like the foil to everything that's happening in reality. I also love the housekeeper. She's so good in this. Like she's just so deeply sad, and like you get that in like all of her interactions, but also like so contained. It's just very effective the way that she like is holding all of that and all of her interactions with the captain, but also has like so much compassion for Ophelia. And then like the captain is a character that you love to hate. He's just like I was reading like more in the Wikipedia, and apparently that actor was like more of like a comedic melodramatic actor. And like he said like this is the most evil character I have ever played in my entire career. So like to be able to channel that, like, man, yeah, like truly wildly effective in this role. And yeah, as I was saying before when you were talking, just like those little like seeds of horror that are planted periodically are so effective. And then it really contrasts nicely when you go back into the fantasy of it all, where it's like, you know, here's reality is horrible, and then it's like let's escape a little bit, but also where we're escaping to isn't really that much better. It's just like it just slightly so, which I also like, where it's not like it's not all fantasy is good. It's like it's still terrible. When she goes, like the Pale Man sequence is so good. When she goes and like first she sneaks in there with the chalk, which I think is a great. I love that little like tiny piece of magic, like very children's story-esque. Then we get into this room, and I was like, I knew that the pale man like eats children, and I couldn't remember. And as I was saying, like, did the faun tell her that he eats children? It's like panning around the room where he's like brutally murdering and chewing and stabbing children. And I was like, oh, never mind. Like, she gets it, hopefully, by these pictures. So like it's yes, it's fantastical, but it's still horrifying and like not great. And then when she does eat the grapes and like activates the pale man, he fucking, not only does he eat the fairies, but he like chews their heads off and like pulls away, where you see like bits still attached. Residue. Like it's awful. It's terrible. And so like this girl who even in her fantasies is still seeing these harsh realities that are so brutal and awful, and like that, all of that is to say that like I really like that, because it's not just, you know, seeing the best of everything 100% of the time. It's still like reality is it can't help but seep its way into her fantasy, and like that I think is what makes this a really effective film for me. I also have the gripe of like the grape where it doesn't make sense to me, but I was thinking about it more, and I think that's when she maybe had gotten in trouble for getting her dress dirty and went to bed without eating, and so like she might have actually been really hungry, and that's why the temptation was higher. But like if it was any other day, I had a really hard time believing that, only because as a result of being the new stepdaughter of the captain, like they are gorging themselves on everything. So in that scene where like they're all eating and stuff. But if she went to bed without any food, I could see the temptation then being greater, and made a comment that this was her wait for me moment. If you're familiar with Hadestown.
Yes.
And that story of Eurydice. But yeah, so that really bothers me. Not really bothers me, but I was just like annoyed by that.
Wait for me.
Yep.
So we had a lot of wait for me moment, grape gripes. This is great.
This is good stuff. There's also like a moment again with like the mandrake root where I guess the line between what's real, what's not real. I mean, it's all magical realism, which like I double majored in Spanish in college, and so like I it was more literature focused, and so magical realism like is definitely a huge literary device in a lot of like Latin literature. So like I get it, but also I was like it's like I can't tell. Can they see that like it's like I don't know, or like we're just seeing so much through her lens that it doesn't really matter, because that's just what she's experiencing. She's like, no, you're preventing my mom from getting better. Like I was trying to help. She doesn't say anything in that moment, but like just seeing the mandrake root get thrown in and like hearing the cries, it's like, oh, does nobody else hear the cry? Like, you know, but again, it's not a super gripe. I think that's just contending with the magic realism that's happening. But
also, I didn't know that you double majored in Spanish.
Yeah, I double majored in psych and Spanish. I really wanted, I wanted to do like 100 different things during that time. I mean, I always want to be a therapist, but there was a moment where I was like, oh, I could be a Spanish teacher. And then I was like, oh, I could be a translator. But translation's really hard, if you didn't know. I didn't like, I did the major because I also studied abroad in Spain, and I didn't want to. Oh, I thought you were going to make your abroad jokes again, like you did last time. I said.
Oh, yeah. I guess I would only make it if you said when I was abroad.
Okay.
Like,
well, when I was
She was abroad.
Oh, she was abroad. Eh? See, yeah.
But yeah, because I wanted to do that study abroad program, I I ended up just getting enough credits to like make it count. So I was like, might as well just like finish this out.
Right.
And then I forgot everything that I learned. So,
Fantastic.
but yeah, it was way more literature focused, and that wasn't that was not necessarily what I wanted to do with my major, but that was just the courses that they had available. So
one more question about it, because
Yeah.
every time we talk about magical realism, I just get sent back to high school, and because the term that I associate that with is the book Like Water for Chocolate. Did you ever have to read that book?
Yeah, I read it.
No.
Okay. And it's like a Mexican, like magical realism, like love story type thing. But that when you said literature, that was like, oh, well, have you read this book? But anyway, yes.
Oh, it's
Sorry, keep going.
It's a movie too.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
movie too. Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know
we read the
that.
book and watched the movie.
Yeah, maybe I did have to read it, but I graduated college a very long time ago. I truly can't remember most of the things that I had read during that time.
Yes.
But what else was I going to say? I just like this movie a lot.
Yeah.
And it makes me very sad. And and I cry at the end a lot.
That's valid. All of that is valid.
Those are
Yep.
that's my thoughts. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, and the effects. The effects are incredible. That's a huge
yeah.
like it's just between the CGI. I feel like is very not super heavily used. Like you
Right.
get it for the fairies and things like that, but I do think they try really like the makeup and just like the practical effects. I think they use like animatronics in this as well. Like all of that is so good. I also love something else that we had looked up while we were watching this is that Doug Jones is not a Spanish actor. He's an American actor.
Right.
So I was like, did he voice his character? Because he plays both the Fawn and the Pale Man. So I was like, oh, he's doing double duty. I mean, the Pale Man doesn't talk, but the Fawn does. And I was like, does he know Spanish? And apparently, Guillermo del Toro was like, you have to do this. They've collaborated on several projects now. Or at the time, I think only Hellboy, but like since from present time, they've worked together a lot. And so he was like, you're going to be both of these characters. And Doug Jones was like, I don't speak Spanish. And Guillermo del Toro was like, it's cool. Like you can just do it phonetically. But Doug Jones was like, no, I want to like, if I'm doing this part, I want to do this part.
Like, no,
He learned the script. Like he learned the script in Spanish and like performed it in Spanish. However, they did end up dubbing him at the end, but the actor who dubbed him was able to like use his mouth movements so that it was like more accurate dubbing. So I thought that was
awesome.
Really fascinating, and like props to Doug Jones for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm sure that made it easier for the person to dub too, as well.
Sure.
Like to match up with his mouth. That's cool.
Yeah. So just another practical thing that like I think is really, really cool.
Yes. Also, well, this is going to be so random too, but not random. The only thing that I associated Pan's Labyrinth with was there's a Bob's Burgers episode, a Halloween episode, and Louise dresses up as Peter Pan's Labyrinth. So she has a Peter Pan outfit on, like with the hat, but then like she has the eyes on her hands.
Oh, that's so clever.
Yes, just like another reason if you don't watch Bob's Burgers to just watch Bob's Burgers, or at least the Halloween episodes, because they're fantastic. But she was Peter Pan's Labyrinth, and it was fantastic.
That's an excellent trivia name too.
Ooh, yes. Make a group.
We usually do
Make it
the
happen.
King and I, Tanya.
Yeah.
The King and I, Tanya. That's fantastic.
But now I like Peter Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Done.
Done and done. All right, Brian, give us your likes and gripes.
Sure. So, I want to start off with just a little story. Mine also
Once
has to do
upon
with
a time.
Once Upon a Time. So before I went abroad in 2007.
When abroad, eh?
I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the podcast, but I used to do movie days where I would plan my day at the movie theater, and I would get there at like 11 o'clock, first showing in the morning. I'd plan the whole day, and I'd see like 5 movies in one day. I would usually do this in December or January, and I would post my schedule online, and people would join me for movies like one or the other or whatnot. I don't do it anymore. However, I had to do one. I would either do it in January or December of the year before, just to like get in all those type of movies. And this year, I had to do one very quickly before I went to London. So I had a day where it was Letters from Iwo Jima, the World War II movie that was this kind of the sequel or the spiritual successor to Flags of My Fathers or whatever it's called by Clint Eastwood. Then I saw Children of Men, which has become one of my favorite movies of all time.
That's Alfonso Cuarón.
Yeah. Who also, I think, helped produce this. Is that right, Jamie?
Yeah, he
Pan's
did.
Labyrinth. And then I saw Pan's Labyrinth, and you can see here I still have my ticket stub.
Ooh,
that's awesome.
$11 in Theater 1 and the Empire 25 in New York City.
Wow.
But yeah, that was one hell of a day. I saw like two. I saw two
That's
exceptional movies. I mean, Letters from Iwo Jima was actually pretty good too. But I saw two exceptional movies that day. So that's and this is only my second time actually seeing Pan's Labyrinth all the way through. I thought this movie is. I mean, this movie is still great. I'll start with my gripes. Well, my favorite is Jamie's gripe, which she said during the watching of this. That's not how you cut a salad.
Dead.
The older woman when they're doing that. My
Absolutely.
second favorite. This is a like and a gripe from this movie. When Mercedes like stabs him in the back, and then he turns around and she stabs him one more time in the in the shoulder,
awesome.
and then stabs and then like
movie.
yeah. And so
I was just like
Jamie
gesturing, like, keep going, girl, keep going.
Also
Jamie
that,
is
yes.
literally
I was like,
sitting
go!
there. She's not saying anything. She's just doing a stab motion.
Just
And I
doing
was
stab
like,
motions.
Yeah, like air stab motions.
Yeah,
and I was like,
fantastic.
I definitely married the right person, but I'm also afraid now.
That's how, listen, cancers all the way. You love them, but you're a little bit
Sometimes-
afraid of them, and that's
Yeah.
great.
She
Yeah.
doesn't do it anymore, but sometimes she would like we'd hug or like kiss or something like that, and then like after like the nice moment, she'd like fake stab me in the side and go stab, like shank shank, or like something like that, or I'd be passing her in the kitchen or something like that, and then she'd just like stab, like she doesn't do it anymore. But I always thought that was charming, which is a whole
Yes.
that's another conversation to have.
That's the
gosh.
dynamic, though. Also,
Yeah,
Jamie, you
I
have
thought
to
it was-
continue that.
Yeah.
Yeah, why did
Anyway.
I stop?
Right.
I don't know.
Why? Now I have to take it on too. So
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was one of my. That was my that was also a gripe of mine, where it's like, keep going, girl. Like, get finish him.
stop.
Finish him.
Finish him.
Jamie actually said it really well, but one of my questions for the group was, did the CGI take you out of it at all at any point?
Never. I was just amazed at how great it was
Yeah.
for the year.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
fair.
What about you?
It does, yeah, it always will. CGI, unless it is perfect, will always take me out of a movie. Not in a bad way, but it just always will.
What was a particular scene that you were like, well,
I think the flower at the end the flower at the very end, if it was like stop motion or something like that, would have been more pleasing to me. I thought that the mandrake sometimes was the couple of times that the mandrake is CG, like when it first turns into a mandrake, was a little bit like took me out of it, and then some shots of the like bug fairy in the first sequence took me out of it. But it never doesn't ruin the movie for me
yeah.
at all, because the practical effects are just like above and beyond. I like how quick this movie is. Like couple of words, and boom, we're right into it. They're on their way to the compound. I thought that the sound design of this movie is spectacular. That moment at the beginning where when she touches the stone and puts it into the slab for the first time, everything cuts out and it's just her and the magic. And I really liked that. On the flip side of that, the leather sound effects, his gloves, at the end, them getting on and off the horses. And the leather of the horses, their boots, that leather sound effect was like very intense. And then the bullets coming out of the woods at the end when they kill everybody. That was a very satisfying. Like all those fascists being killed by the men in the woods
When they were trying to chase Mercedes.
Yes, that was very satisfying. And the bullets through the woods, that ping, and then like the thwomp of it hitting a body was very satisfying in a weird way. I like, again, my like is that the villain is fantastic in every aspect of being a villain. I thought he was because you also understand why people fear him. You understand why people are making jolly with him at dinner and stuff like that. Like, he has aspects of himself that are charming very clearly, because even though the mom was probably under duress anyway, just because the war was over, she didn't have a husband anymore, this man of stature was interested in her. I also like that they don't explicitly say it, nor do we think it could be real or not, but those two ladies at the dinner say something like, oh, so interesting that it happened so quickly, and the husband died, and they and I don't think that the movie, and Jamie was like, did he kill the father? And
I have this implanted memory where I thought that he killed the husband in order to marry her, and they literally never say anything about that. So I was like, where did I get this idea from? But it does feel weird, that interaction.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And in hindsight, the reason I like that moment is because they don't explicitly say it, but they put this idea in your head, and that is kind of this moment where it's because they even think he could be able to do that, automatically as a viewer, this guy is evil, even if he didn't do that. People think he could have done that, and that's enough.
Right. Their perception of him changes in that moment.
Totally.
Yeah.
I thought that I wrote the fairy transition was awesome when the bug turns into the fairy.
Yes.
I really like the kind of the Captain Hook, the clock, his time running out, his legacy, his son stuff. I thought that was really interesting and deeply motivating for that villain, and it made me, because he believes in his political party or whatever it is. He loves the power, and then he wants a legacy. I thought all that was really interesting, especially with the father story we talked about at the beginning. But something I also really liked about that aspect of things is that I thought that what made him a great villain is that he knew his flaw. He even says that, my flaw, you found my flaw, my weakness, it's my pride. He knows. There are a lot of villains who are completely oblivious to what their flaws are, whether it's a part of narcissism or whether it's just, just being blind to whatever it is. To me, that makes him a more interesting villain and a more villainous villain, because he knew that. And that transition line where he's like, but we're not talking about my weaknesses, or whatever he says to Mercedes, was spectacular. Her failing the fawn and not giving her the third task, I love how Jamie mentioned this earlier. I love how it corresponds with just before her mom dying, because she knows how dire the situation is. So the fawn is reflecting the true bottom that she's at. And then when the mother dies and she's locked in her room and the fawn comes to, now she's at her bottom again, but the fawn comes back. In another movie, I'd be like, the fawn wouldn't just give her a third chance. But because of where the story and the narrative is at that time, you understand why her imagination is all of a sudden conjuring up the fawn again. And I love that.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So and I love this movie. I think it is well acted. I think it's one of the, I would argue that it's one of the better child performances I've ever seen.
They picked her
She's
out of
amazing.
1,000 kids.
That's amazing. And
Nice.
she won the Goya Award. We're talking about we should have just done a series on Goya Award winners for like best newcomer or something like that.
It's wonderful.
But the thing that I will say, and I want to ask, and I'll reiterate again. I love that she also mentioned briefly when she's talking to the baby in her. First of all, one of my gripes was like, I don't know if I like the like going inside and seeing the fetus type of thing. That wasn't
Yeah,
my
I didn't
favorite
see that.
at the beginning. But I really like when she's talking to her brother in the middle, and she's like, Mom can get sad for a couple of days, but like maybe we're supposed to infer that like the mom, at least post dad dying, was like depressed. This was her way of filling that hole. The way that because she says like you wouldn't understand or something to that, like I was lonely. She's like, well, you have me. It's like, no, when you're older you'll understand. Like I like the idea that the mom is filling her loneliness and sadness and despair with this man, with like power and all of that, but the kid fills it with the stories and like disassociating with those stories. So my question for you all is, what actually happened? Do you think that the fawn and stuff were actually real and only she could see them? Do you think it was just her way of dissociating? Does it not matter? Because if she thinks she sees them, they're real to her and they helped her through the situation. Like, so I'll just open that up to discussion.
Yeah, I'll say I like the last thing that you said. I never thought of it in that aspect, but I think that's what I agree the most with, is that it doesn't matter because it got her through it. And even if she actually died, her mind manifested her going to a better place. And so I think that kind of filled the void for her soul, even though her physical body is dead. So yeah, I think it, as much as I want there to be a direct answer, I think I like the idea of it, that it doesn't matter, because that was the thing that she went through a lot of different stuff, and so this was the thing that kept her going and kept her spirits up, so yeah, I'll go with that. What about you, Jamie?
Yeah, I think I agree, where like it doesn't really matter, but it does, like the ending is sad, but like it's bittersweet, because it's like, oh, at least she believed that she accomplished this, and like that's the last thing that she thinks of before she dies, and like that's there's hope that she does in fact become a princess in her mind, and it's like, great,
right? And that's just like so beautiful. I know. Oh, so good.
I know. I was crying on this one too. I agree with you two. I think it's if I'm going to really break it down, I don't think any of it was real. I think that she was pretending the whole time, but it was her way of dissociating. Therefore, if she saw it and she felt it, then it was real. And I think that everything corresponded what was happening. Do I think she put like ginger and milk under the bed? And when her mom started to get better, she thought it was that, but it was just a bell curve. And the idea that her mom what really upsets me is that her last interaction with her mom is her mom kind of throwing that into the fire and then getting angry with her. I think because the mom is so afraid of the husband. Like, the mom is a very different person when she's just with the kids and when the husband is there. And so I think there's a lot to say about all of that stuff. I think that, I love the last line where it's like, if people know where to look, they'll see this person's impact on the world. And I think there's a couple of ways to look at that. I think that the first way to look at that is the most literal version, which is her brother. She saved her brother, and she was able to, in some ways, she was able to help the freedom fighters, and all of that. And she was able, and she weakened the captain by drugging him. Like, there was a lot that she did that actually helped, in terms of the tangible things that she did. But the other things that she did, and plus her name is Ophelia, so like, there's a connotation that comes with Ophelia in terms of like being this flower, this oleander, this type of like beautiful, innocent creature that is taken advantage of by the men in her life, whether it's Ophelia from Hamlet or whether it's this one. So if you it's either like orchid, you used to have that flower at the end representing Ophelia, which I thought was beautiful. But then you also have the idea that like she changed Mercedes' life, and she in some ways she made Mercedes a mom, and like and the idea that like I like that idea that like Mercedes has that comment about like, she's like, oh, under my nose because you're a woman or whatever. And she's like, but that's why you didn't notice me, you idiot.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And I just like the idea of like, because he's such an egotistical, misogynist, prideful like man, he missed all of the things that were his eventual downfall.
Right.
But at the very end of it, to me, and I think I read that Guillermo del Toro said this at some point, this movie is at its simplest forms just a fairy tale with an allegory that essentially in the end is fight fascism at any costs. And she gave her life for the cause of these people in the woods. And also something I should mention, I'm just thinking of this now, is she also had Schindler's List red coat girl vibes as well as Anne Frank vibes in terms of what she looked like.
Yes.
And I think that kind of adds to how you feel about this character. But yeah, it was deeply sad, but she was brave. She's probably one of the braver people in this whole movie. And unfortunately she doesn't make it, which was kind of foreshadowed in a lot of like the piece. But really sometimes you have to take the evil down with yourself.
Right. But it's also like a beautiful thing to think that she was experiencing these magical things in the midst of all of the horror that was like surrounding her, and that was her escape. It was beautiful that she could still yeah, right. Yes, you get rewarded for it, like that, still having her imagination, still being creative in the midst of all of all that stuff is also just like a beautiful kind of theme throughout. So grand. Well, should we get into the next section? Let's talk about some brains.
Yum.
Tasty. So many brains.
Banana.
So Jamie, you already kind of mentioned this, but I'm just gonna ask again. So I would love to Billy or Stu our captain.
Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative. It's a scream, baby.
Billy or Stu.
But you already kind of mentioned like psychopathic vibes. So if you could just dive a little deeper, please, into that.
I was thinking about this. There's a part of me that thinks maybe he's more Stu-like, only because I don't think that he's doing a lot of like reacting to what's happening. Like they're obviously plotting a like, a counter offense, and like there's all war speak happening. So there's a lot of like plotting and planning and things like that. But his reactions, the things that we're seeing, the grotesque violence around is like reactions to things. So when they come upon the father and son who are hunting for rabbits, when they capture one of the rebels and like is preparing for torture, like a lot of it is like reactive and feels less thoughtful, where I feel like the Billy side is this like really intentional planning of what is happening in terms of like how you're causing harm to people. But with Stu, it's like just kind of reacting and going along with what's happening in the moment, and feels less like planned out. So I kind of got more Stu vibes because of like it's like this impulsive reaction in each moment with no regard to like humanity. So like an impulsive, hit this guy in the face, or like just do whatever torture I feel like I need to do in order to get the answers that I'm looking for.
For sure.
So can I ask like a weird follow-up question to that?
No.
Okay, thank you. No, but
go forth.
Yes. Would the context in which all this is happening affect whether they are a Billy or a Stu? Because Billy and Stu had to kind of like secretly hide who they were, or Dexter has to hide who he is in media. And in real life, if you're a sociopath or whatnot, you have to kind of hide who you are in the norms of society, norms in quotes. But this is wartime, and he's in a position of power. So he doesn't necessarily have to hide the fact that like he maybe is a sociopath or a psychopath, because he is given free reign essentially to do it. Does that affect any of that, or are you still a Stu or a Billy regardless of what context you're in?
No, that's a really interesting, good question.
Good question.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, because it's like he isn't like, he has all the power, so he doesn't have to conceal his true nature, if you will, like to the degree that like he's not just like killing random people. He's killing people who it's like still under the guise, I guess, or like under this belief system of like what side he's on and believing it so fervently. And so like it's connected to that, but I do think that there is this level of like, he does have all the power, so no one's going to question him if he just like kills somebody. Like no one's asking about it. It's also very like, no one's questioning the fact that the captain of the army is the one doing the torture, like that he doesn't have a guy for that seemingly. Like why is he the one that needs to do this, and he tells everyone to leave him every time. Like he's just like, I feel like there's something there where nobody really reacts. But I feel like the scene with the father and son, like everyone is there watching this happen and no one says anything, but like there's some energy there after he kills them both, especially when he pulls the rabbit out of the bag, because the father and son are just saying like, he's just hunting rabbits, like there's no rebellion, like we're just regular schmoes here. And obviously he doesn't believe them, because that's like his perception is just constantly from the beginning of the film that like they're being like not persecuted because they're the ones in power, but like that they're being undermined at every step of the way. And so for the reality to hit that like they were really just regular people, hunting rabbits, and then him saying like, next time you bring me people, make sure that they act like, confirm these suspicions, but like no one says anything about like, you just killed 2 innocent people.
Right.
Also,
and he doesn't really like, he doesn't seem to feel any remorse for that either. He's just like, it's an interesting comment to make for someone who doesn't have any regard for human life. Because otherwise it's just like, yeah, who cares about these people? Like there's something about that. So I think it's interesting that he says that to them, because otherwise, like, I don't think that he cares about other people.
Yeah. And when he's about to torture Mercedes at the end, his second in command or whatever it is like, he basically says like, do you want me to stay back? Like, I guess you could take that in a couple of ways. You can take it in terms of like, he wants to be a part of the action, but because of his answer where he says like, you think I can't handle a woman or something like that. To me, it's like the second in command is almost nervous for this woman because they know how sadistic the captain is.
Exactly.
And only when she attacks the captain, and like that's when he gets aggressive. That's when the second in command gets aggressive to her, like when they're in the woods chasing after her, because he hurt the captain, who in turn like is his boss and like whatnot. I thought that dynamic, even if it was only in like 1 or 2 parts of a scene, was fascinating.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, that whole scene in general was just a lot to unpack, as far as just like the pride of the captain and just the dynamic of like, this is, I don't know, it makes sense what you're saying, Jamie, as far as him just reacting to things and not really planning through, because like he's not even thinking about this woman either as like a threat. He's just like, here we are, this is what I'm gonna do, like, so that absolutely makes sense. And he's not also going out and saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go capture one of them and like torture them and get them to talk. And then it's like, no, people got caught. And then as a result, he's like, okay, well now let's see. Or even when they're in the forest and they do kill some of the rebellion, but they're still looking for, they're like, oh, well, let's look for a live one. So that we can see if we can get them to talk and stuff like that. So that,
and he was easily
makes
fooled
sense.
and tricked. Like they blew up the train, and then he was like, "Oh,
Yeah."
And then
But he also was clever. Like he was able to deduce
Yes.
like small details. Like that's how he figured out about the doctor. He figured out about Mercedes. Like he figured out
Right.
these small connections that seemingly like no one else was paying attention to. And I think part of that is like he put himself in positions where like he's the only one that has this information for whatever
Sure.
reason. But
fair.
like in
Yeah.
that way, it's like, oh, you are super clever, but you still got tricked.
Right, because they still went and got all the food and stuff and medicine, like, because he
Yeah.
was distracted with the trains, all
Yeah.
that stuff. Yeah, crazy. Okay, my last question is more so I'm thinking of Ophelia and in the situation that she was in with her mom being sick and then eventually dying, and then she's under the care of someone that is not great and not taking care of her and not, thinking about her. And so that just made me think about, when social services has to be called for a child that's not being taken care of in whatever form or facet, and thinking like, Ophelia really didn't have anybody that could like help her. I mean, Mercedes was like trying to help her, but also like Mercedes had all of her other stuff like going on. So I just wanted to ask the general question of like, if a child general question, if a child was being abused but didn't have an adult to go to try to get help, like how could they seek out that potential help? And I know you've worked a little bit with that kind of environment, so I was like, let me see if Jamie knows an answer.
Yeah. So I dabbled in foster care for like a year. That was like the briefest stint that I did. And I mean, it's really complicated because I think it definitely depends on context. So like if there isn't like a family member that they can go to talk about like what's happening to them, potentially there are other avenues where they can talk to somebody, because there are a lot of professionals who are mandated reporters, meaning you're required per your field, if you have a license of some kind, or the population that you work with, that you're required to be trained in seeing signs of child abuse and neglect, and then like legally obligated to report it to the local child protective services that you are, like, it's state by state.
Right.
So that could be school. If she's attending school, I think like most, if not all, professionals working in a school, so not just like a school counselor, but like teachers, the
Any
principal,
teacher,
everybody
administrative,
who, all admin, and like support and things like that in a school are all mandated reporters. So like if she was attending school in contemporary times, telling a teacher would then be a space where like they can file a report on that child's behalf. Doctors and like medical professionals are also mandated reporters. So like if she had the doctor's appointment, and like, was able to tell a doctor as well. So there's like other spaces where there are mandated reporters, even if like a family member is not, even if the family member actually like is the perpetrator,
Right.
or a family member is enabling abuse or neglect, so that makes them like a not safe person to talk to about it, that there are other spaces. But it is hard. Also, like, depending on how old a child is and like that has access to a phone, like in theory you can, not in theory, but like you can self-report. If, I've read about anecdotes of like young people, I would say, so like probably like preteen or teenage, that are still under the age of 18, who have called directly or like have called 911, and like that intervention. So not like it shouldn't be a situation where a young person has to contact them on their behalf. I mean, it also shouldn't be a situation where they're being abused and neglected at all. But, this is the reality. So, yeah, like anyone can call. You don't have to be a mandated reporter. That really just means that like you are legally obligated to and like
say
have
something.
received the training and stuff. But like,
right, you
can just be like a regular bystander and still call. Like there's no rule saying like you're not allowed to. And like nothing. There's even an anonymous line. So like if you're not totally sure, you can call the anonymous line, report the information that you do know, and then they will tell you whether or not you actually need to make the report.
Nice.
So like that's also an option for folks if they're not sure if they need to report it. Like I've thought about like situations where I've been on, and this is also like if you're a mandated reporter, it's not just in the context of your work. So like for example, I've been on the subway before, and like I'm not on duty for anything. I'm just like commuting, and I've seen things that I'm like I am a mandated reporter and I am obligated to report, even though it's a complete stranger that just like happens to be on my commute, that like I don't know them from like anyone else, but like falling under falling under the obligation to report. And like if for whatever reason I didn't, and it somehow they figured out that I happened to be in that train car and didn't say anything, like that could potentially be like a bad consequence. So like it does fall outside of just like your job.
But that absolutely makes sense. And it's good to know that I didn't even think being in school and teachers, because that would be definitely a go-to of a way for a child to be able to seek help in that way. Yeah. But great. Awesome. That's all that I have for brains. Should we rotten tomatin?
Let's rotten tomatin this bad boy. Rotten tomatin.
That was me eating a rotten tomato.
Oh.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
Also,
I was with you, Jamie.
Anyway,
I got you.
All right.
I'm a tomato
What
hater.
do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
It's gotta be high.
I'm gonna say like 86.
Oh, I was gonna say like 98.
Oh.
Oh, right. This has a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, great.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And the audience score is 91.
Nice.
Yeah. So, the critic consensus is Pan's Labyrinth is Alice in Wonderland for grown-ups, with the horrors of both reality and fantasy blended together into an extraordinary spellbinding fable.
Yeah.
I mean, Alice in Wonderland's also creepy.
Yeah.
It is very creepy.
All right, so we're doing a new thing where what do you think the average out of 5 on Letterboxd is from like just viewers from people? Remember, you can do decimals, so anywhere between 0.0 and 5.0. What do you think this has? The average.
I think like a 4.7.
Yeah, I was gonna say 4.6.
4.2.
Oh, nice.
And one of the most, let's see, so some of the most liked comments on this are, bro, where the fuck was David Bowie?
Exactly.
Oh my
exactly. Just saying.
Actually, wait, the top comments on this, like, are, you think we wrote them. The next one is, Ophelia risked her life for some grapes. I ain't forget.
Exactly.
I forget. Oh my god.
Hashtag never forget.
Yeah.
Another good one is, I would have turned around the second I saw that big fuck frog.
That frog was creepy.
It's scary.
And then my favorite one is, be honest. If this had been released in 2018, how many of you would have decided you wanted to fuck the fawn?
Damn. People have no chill.
The internet has no chill
No.
whatsoever.
Okay.
Daddy
Horny little
Fawn.
freaks.
Daddy Fawn. All right, so we do the 4 S's.
Yes.
Yeses.
Skull, scare, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horrors 4 S's.
All right, the 4 S's are skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. We are here to rate skulls, scares, and shakes 1 through 10. Skulls is how well do you think it handled mental health and human behavior. Scares is how scary was it, and then shakes is how much will this stick with you. And then we'll give some suggestions. Jamie, why don't you start us off with your skulls, scares, and shakes?
Sure. I'm like adjusting them as I'm getting ready to say them. So for skulls, I was torn between a 6 and a 7. I put a 6. It's hard because like there's so many fantastical elements of this, but yeah, I mean, maybe I'll give it a 7 because I don't think that necessarily a lot of people are making bad choices. I do think that a lot of people are like very much being human in the things that are, motivating them and things like that. Maybe a few people could have made a few better decisions here and there, but like nothing overly stands out. For scares, I'm giving it a 3. Because this movie doesn't have like a good amount of jump scares, but there are some very disturbing images as we talked about, and just a lot of tension building. And then for shakes, I'm giving this a 6, just because like I realized I couldn't remember a lot of this movie, but the overall tone had really resonated with me, and like it's so good. Everyone should see it.
Yeah. Jamie, we almost had the same scores until you changed your skulls to 7.
Oh, no. What did
So
I do?
it's skulls was a 6, scares was a 3, shakes was a 6 for me. I thoroughly
Same
enjoyed this
wavelength.
movie again. Right, we're on the same wavelength. It was definitely not what I was expecting. So my expectations were very low, but then it got me. It was very good, and I would definitely highly recommend that people see it as well.
Cool. Skulls, I had a 7. Same reasons. I also think that they show children disassociating pretty well, like in general.
Yeah.
Scares, I gave it a 5. It's not scary, but it just leaves you with such... And maybe I'm combining shakes into this too much, but it just leaves you with this like, it just, the yuckiness. It gives you that Holocaust movie feeling in some places that I don't like living with. So I would put that in scares. And then shakes, I gave this a 9 because of all the movies, the fantasy movies, the horror movies, the Guillermo del Toro movies. I will never forget The Fawn, The Pale Man, as Jamie said, the tone of this movie, the villain. Like, I only saw this once before, and I remembered all of those images and the feeling that this movie gives you, and it just seared into my mind. And like, to me, this is an all-time great movie, and to me, this is the movie that puts Guillermo del Toro. Don't get me wrong, like a lot of his movies are wonderful and spectacular, and honestly, I know he produced it, but I have not watched his Cabinet of Curiosities on Netflix. I haven't watched any.
Yeah.
But like, he's one of the greats. Just the way that he can make you. I didn't see Pinocchio, which like I should see. Like there's so much of his work that I haven't seen, and yet like he like. Everything just sticks with you. He just knows.
Bump my shakes up to an 8. I don't know why I gave it a 6. That wasn't good. I agree. This I think is my favorite of his movies by far.
Yeah. Oh, you don't like fucking frogs? Fucking semen?
Wasn't a frog? What?
No, it was a creature.
It was a water fish. It was a fish.
It was a
It was a
fishman.
fish.
He was a
You don't like
fishman.
fucking fish?
You don't like fucking fishman?
Also, Crimson
Anyway.
Peak is like very like.
Oh, that's my
lovely
suggestion.
visuals. Oh, I'm so
well,
sorry.
Good segue.
I'll just see myself out of here.
Let me just roll out of the frame.
Rolling out.
Yeah, no, because I really enjoyed Crimson Peak. I saw that movie in theaters, and I thought that kind of like magical realism too. On top of, I love his aesthetic of his movies. Like it's very gothic, you know, and the color scheme and just like how he films things, like it's very much something that is pleasing to my eyes. So when watching this, I was thinking of Crimson Peak. So
Cool.
yeah.
Jamie?
I was thinking of other things that have the like kind of magical realism vibes. So I have two. One, I mean, neither of them are particularly scary. The first one is Edward Scissorhands, also from a director that has like a very specific, unique like lens and aesthetic and vibe. And then the other one I chose is Birdman, which is an excellent film.
I've never seen Birdman.
Oh man.
Oh,
And
you would love it,
he's-
Nikisha.
Yeah.
He's my Batman.
Ooh. Okay.
So I have a lot of suggestions here based on different things. And I'm only going to say them because no one else said them.
Sure.
If you want more Guillermo del Toro madness, check out one of his original movies, Kronos. Also, if you want more of this, any of the two Hellboy movies that he made.
Yeah.
Just in terms of that aesthetic as well as all that fun stuff. And then I haven't seen Pinocchio, but I hear it's spectacular. If you want more like children fantasy horror stuff, the two I would suggest, one is Coraline.
Love Coraline.
And this next one's not scary, but it's one of the greatest movies ever, Spirited Away.
Oh, yeah.
So good.
So those would be
Fantastic.
my suggestions.
Good
stuff, good
suggestions.
stuff.
Good suggestions. All right. Well, I think that wraps up our episode of Pan's Labyrinth. Not just Labyrinth. No David Bowie in this one. But good old Daddy Fawn is in this. So
Papa Fawn.
Papa Fawn. You can follow us on all of the social medias, the TikTok, the Twitter, the Instagram, at Talk Horror Pod, Pod. And Brian, where can they listen to us?
You can listen to us wherever you are listening to podcasts. Maybe you listen to them on YouTube and watch them. We're there. Maybe you're listening to them on Spotify. Guess what? We're there. Perhaps Apple Podcasts. We're also there. Rate and review us on every single platform that you're listening to us. 5 stars, please.
And thank you.
And something
Eyes.
something that we also didn't say is well, we did, but get excited for October. We got some fun stuff for you.
Woo. It's going to be an exciting time. There's a Friday the 13th in October too, guys. It's going to be a good one. Fantastic. Well, I just want to sign off with a stab because that is what is going to be in my brain from this
You're welcome.
episode is Jamie being violent because she's like the least violent person on the face of the planet. So thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.